Welcome back, you guys, to another episode of Running with Wolves. I'm so fucking jazzed for this episode, you guys, because nothing gets me, I would say, like more excited than when you make one or two marketing changes and boom, your clients see results. Like, it seriously, I don't do drugs, but if I did, I feel that this is what it would feel like. Truly, I really think so. So, this episode goes out to, I would say, those of you who feel like you are doing everything right and still hearing crickets, right? You're posting the content. You are following a strategy. You're not just like randomly posting, you're following a strategy. People are inquiring. Maybe it's not the right people that you want to inquire. Maybe they're ghosting you. Maybe they're taking a long ass time to buy. And sales feels harder than it ever has before. And you're like, I feel that I'm doing everything you're telling me to do, Savannah. So, like, why am I not seeing results? Welcome, because this episode is literally for you. So, I'm going to walk you through a real client case study, actually, that just happened last week. You know that that meme that's like, write that down, write that down. Last week when my client told me this happened, I was like, write that down. We're doing podcasts next week. We need to talk about this. So I'm excited and I apologize in advance. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, you will see my very large cup of coffee that I have in front of me. For those of you that are just listening, you can imagine me gripping violently a cup of coffee. It's a venti, and I have two ad shots in it. So buckle up, kids, because it's going to be a wild ride as per usual. So I'm going to walk you through this client case study, and I'm going to talk to you guys about how this accelerator client of mine basically was seeing great momentum and sales in March, all the way up until March, really, like was killing the game. And then in April was like, where did it all go? The leads had dried up, the sales had stopped, and she came to me about halfway through the month. I was kind of freaking out a little bit. And so basically, in the accelerator, we do one-on-one calls. So she told me this during our one-on-one call and had sent me some data beforehand and was like, I don't really know what I'm doing wrong, so I need you to look at it because clearly I'm doing something wrong. I made just a few changes for her. And when I say just a few, you guys, I mean like two. And I had her implement for 2 weeks. And then it's May 7th right now when I'm recording this. I believe it was Monday because today's a Wednesday. She told me that she literally had closed $11,000 in sales in less than a week. Her leads were picking back up. They were really good quality leads. And on top of that, if they weren't closing on her sales calls, she knew exactly what to put in her marketing to actually get them to close. And like when my clients tell me that, like she told me this after putting some objection handling content in her stories, she did not consult me for this because of what happened in her sales call. And the person that she literally was posting basically for immediately paid after watching her story. When my clients tell me that, I like get chills talking about it right now because it's like a proud mom moment where I'm like, oh my God, everything that I have taught you, you've listened, you've implemented, and more than that, I'm not telling you what to do and you're doing it. Now you actually know how to do this on your own. It feels like when you're teaching your baby to walk and they're like holding your hands and you're walking with them versus like you let go and they keep walking, or like teaching your kid to ride a bike and you're like, oh my God, you're doing this on your own. You know how to do this now. Like it's not just something I'm telling you to do and you're mimicking it. Like this is a skill of yours now. It's such a cool experience, and that truly, I would say, is like my entire goal when my clients work with me. I don't want you to have to continue working with me if you don't want to. A lot of my clients will continue because they just don't want to have to think about it and have me tell them what to do for marketing and sales, and I'm okay with that. But for some people, they just know they're not doing it correctly, and so they want to learn how to do it properly. And so then when I teach them and I don't even have to tell them what to do anymore and they just do it, I'm like, this is the best day of my life, and I get to have that every day because it happens to my clients all the time. So without further ado, let's get into this because it really was truly like the easiest changes that we've made. And I can't wait to tell you why. So let me set the scene before we kind of get into the changes that we made because you need more context to understand the changes and all that good stuff, right? So like I said, this client came to me inside the accelerator after weeks of feeling like her audience had really kind of gone cold. Again, leads had dried up, sales conversations were kind of happening, but it was from old leads. And when they were happening, a lot of people were like, I can't afford this right now, or this is definitely something that I want to do in the future. You're on my list, blah, blah, blah. But she was posting every single day, and she was posting consistently. She was sharing, testimonials and client case studies, and felt like she was following the strategy that we had kind of mapped out. And yet still, again, no one was buying. There was no urgency. There were no conversions. And she initially, when she came to me, we were having that conversation during our one-on-one, she kind of wanted to blame the economy. She was like, I just don't know. Like, maybe it's that, no one's buying in the economy, or it's just making people reconsider, or it's taking them longer. They have more concerns that I'm unaware of, right? But here's what I will say. My stance is always that you can still make sales. You are in full control of your sales no matter what else is happening in the world, external circumstances, economy, administration, who's in the office, like truly anything. And so, in my opinion, I was like, maybe, but that's like the last thing that I want to be looking at. I want to look at what you've been putting out, content that's going out, marketing and sales data, and see if there's anything else that is coming up. And if not, we can talk about, putting some stuff in about the economy or whatever. So anytime I have a client tell me that they're not seeing the results that they want, right? There's kind of an order of things that I typically look at to see what's the issue here, basically, right? First thing we look at is going to basically be, what have we been putting out? You want to look at yourself first. Now, I work with business owners every single day, as you guys well know. And the reality, I love business owners, but you guys can all probably relate. We get shiny, bright object syndrome very quickly. Like I said, we get bright, shiny object syndrome very quickly. And so I think it's really easy as business owners for us to know what our strategy is and then kind of like stray off the beaten path a little bit of what we know works. For example, you could go on a walk and listen to an hour-long podcast and get 30 different content ideas. Those ideas might not necessarily work for your target audience, but they're ideas nonetheless. Or you're inspired by a book that you're reading or a conversation you have with somebody, and you're like, ooh, this kind of just occurred to me and I want to have a conversation about it in my content, which is amazing. But the problem with that is that might not necessarily be what your target audience needs to hear. It's just what you want to talk about. And those are two very different things, right? And that's probably not going to be the thing that gets people over the edge in order to buy. It's going to warm them up for sure, but it's not going to create sales, right? So if the results have changed, or if something's going wrong, first thing you want to look at is yourself. Has something changed in my marketing and sales from what I know works that is causing a difference in results? And I love people. I love business owners, but honestly, I would say probably 50% of the time, if a client comes to me and they're like, I'm not seeing results, they're not staying with the strategy that they need to create. They're not staying with the strategy that they need to implement that sees results. We talk a lot about how consistency is super important, but it's not just consistency in posting, it's consistency in your strategy. So we look at those things first, right? We look at your marketing and sales data to see if what your audience is resonating with is what's actually going out. If nothing has changed there, you're like, no, like marketing and sales data wise, I'm putting out all the content that I should be putting out and results still are not happening. Then we look at your audience. Sometimes your buyer types can shift and change, right? That happened to me about a year ago. I went from super analytical and assertive to super emotional and relational with my buyers in my target audience. And then it's really interesting, since the beginning of this year, it's actually changed back to more analytical and assertive. Only reason I know that is because the content we were putting out, our marketing and our sales process had not changed, and yet what typically resonated with my audience wasn't resonating anymore. So we saw the same thing: slower leads, slower sales, lots of objections. So when we looked at everything, buyer types had changed. So we changed the content and boom, things picked right back up and we were good to go. So sometimes that can happen. So look at your audience. Did the phase of the marketing funnel that they're in change? Did their buyer types change? Did their objections change? Did their experiences change? Are you talking to them in the ways you need to speak to them in order for them to buy? If none of that has changed, then you want to look at marketing and sales as a whole. then you want to look at the economy. Those are like the last two, because typically those are not the things that have changed. The economy, I would say, ebbs and flows every year, 4 to 5 years, honestly. Dramatic changes can happen every 4 to 5 years. Obviously, we saw this happen in the beginning of COVID. Now it's kind of happening again. But marketing and sales ebbs and flows like every year. And if you're not keeping up with the times, of course, sales aren't going to keep up with you, right? So we dug into all of that. Love her. But like, obviously the first thing was that she wasn't sticking with the strategy, right? So now that I've kind of talked you through like the order of which I look through things, we can kind of talk about what we found with this client. There were a lot of kind of mistakes that she was making, and then we can talk about the changes that we made in order for her to see these results. So mistake number one was that she was only showing up to sell and not to warm her audience. What's really funny is that oftentimes you guys will hear me say, you're only warming your audience, you're only educating, you're only talking about yourself, and that's not what you need to do in order to create sales. But the opposite can also be true as well. If your audience is colder and you're just showing up and selling to them, you're going to turn them off and they're not going to buy from you. So both are equally important. Sales cannot exist without attraction, warming, and converting content, okay? So like you cannot just get stuck on one phase of the funnel and exclusively create that content and then wonder why you're not seeing sales. Your audience needs all those things in order to ultimately buy from you. Her content was all like, work with me, DM me to book, no context, no lead up, no real path, right? So she'd only post like, hey, I have 2 spots left, but her audience had really, I would say like no understanding of what offer in her product suite was the right fit for them and why it mattered. They weren't really saying no to her. They were saying nothing. There were no leads inquiring, and that's because she wasn't warming them up. All she was doing was just selling to them and creating social proof. The second mistake that she was making was that her messaging was rooted in what she wanted to say, not what her audience needed to hear. She was kind of focused on what she thought was valuable, not what actually resonated with her audience. She was focusing on examples that she had kind of been hearing specifically around the economy shifting, not what her target audience was experiencing. So kind of what this looked like was in her content, because it was really interesting. She had kind of said to me, she was like, oh yeah, I've mentioned like, buying clothes on a budget or styling on a budget like a few times. And I was like, okay, it's probably not that. Like that's not a big deal. It's not really going to like turn off her audience. I went and looked at her content, you guys, and it was all of that. It was, you can still have great style while shopping at TJ Maxx, right? But the problem with that, now here's the thing. There's no problem with shopping at TJ Maxx. I fucking love a TJ Maxx run more than anybody else, okay? TJ Maxx, Home Goods, like your girl loves a bargain just as much as I love a great find on like the Real, for example. I have no qualms about paying like really any price point for clothes. It's more so like the quality of it, and is this going to last me for years to come? Is this classic? Does it fit with my style, right? So that's not really the issue here. The issue for her was that her target audience didn't necessarily have those experiences. They probably weren't shopping at TJ Maxx. She's speaking to people, she's New York based. She's speaking to people who are a little more affluent. And she's also speaking to people who are doing things like hiring an interior designer, right? They're getting promoted to like C-suite positions, or they're stay-at-home moms, but their husbands make great money, or their partners make great money, or they're really successful business owners, right? They don't mind paying money because they have a little bit more recreational income to spend. And so for them, it was less about, oh, the economy is shifting, and so here's how to make sure you still have great style, and more so about, I want to have great style. I just don't know what that looks like for me, and I'm willing to spend the money, but I want to make sure that the stylist I'm working with completely gets me and that I actually know how to put outfits together after those people help me, right? So the problem with that was because so much of her content was centered around that, when her target audience came in contact with her content, it would kind of go right over their head because they weren't really resonating with what she was talking about. If you saw a piece of content and you had just hired an interior decorator the week prior and were potentially looking for a stylist, and they were like, hey, here's how to still be stylish and shop at TJ Maxx, you'd be like, yeah, love that, but not for me, right? It wouldn't resonate with you because it's not what you're experiencing. And so because of that, she was losing the sale because they weren't even consuming her content, much less consuming the messaging that they needed to hear in order to buy. The gap between her and her sales wasn't a lack of effort, it was a lack of relevance. So, mistake number 3, there was no movement or momentum in her content. Each post, I would say, really stood on its own. There was no like real narrative, no sense of urgency, no sense of buildup as to like why they needed to act now. If someone landed on her page, there wasn't a huge natural flow. You'd see like a random like to know it post here or there, a personal story here, a hard pitch, like kind of randomly thrown in, but it didn't really move you towards action. It didn't feel cohesive or convincing. There wasn't anything that really told them, hey, I have to do this now. So, with all that being said, let's kind of talk about the changes that we made and the results that she saw because of it. So just to kind of wrap all that up, when I looked at a lot of her content, there wasn't a ton of real structure to her marketing. It all felt kind of like a hodgepodge of posts thrown together to try to see what worked, right? Second of all, she wasn't speaking to her target audience's experiences. She was speaking to a lower level client. And then third of all, there was no urgency for them to move right now and invest in her styling services. So first shift that we made is we built a content flow or funnel. So instead of trying to really say everything all at once, I looked at her marketing and her sales data. And when we looked at that and we cross-referenced it with the qualified leads and sales, like the easiest sales she'd gotten in, let's say, like since the beginning of the year, basically, there were kind of, I would say, like 5 to 7 core pillars that came through when it came to her content that had created those leads and those sales. And then I cross-referenced that with the content that she was putting out now, and it was very different. And so, like I said, we kind of built that funnel off of what we knew already worked. So I gave her kind of this like 5-day sequence that led her audience from, oh my gosh, that's me, that's a problem that I have, to take my fucking wallet and take me shopping right now. So let's kind of talk about what that sequence could potentially look like for you as a product-based business or a service-based business. Day 1 could basically be, let's say you own a skincare brand, right? Here's what's keeping your skin from clearing up, even if you've tried all the things, right? They're like, oh, that's me. Again, that's a problem I'm having, and these are all the things that I'm trying, and nothing is working. Day 2, why our detox mask works when others don't. So again, this is something that creates a little bit of a UVP, how we're different, why we're better, why our products are better. That's going to get them to be like, that's a problem I have, and now this is a brand I would potentially consider purchasing from because they're clearly better than others. Day 3, social proof. Real customers who used our products and saw results. So you're talking about, again, where they were before they started using your products, where they are now, why the product works so well for them, more than others that they had tried before. Day 4, what to expect in your first 7 days. Your solution selling, right? So you have this problem, which is your skin won't clear up, and you for some reason do not understand why it won't. Once you start using our product, here's what you can expect in the first 7 days. Again, results-based selling. Day 5 is urgency. Here's your code. It expires at midnight. See how there we're basically giving them a reason to move now. They have a problem. They recognize that we offer the solution, which is our product. We do it better than anybody else. Here's results you can expect, and here's urgency as to why you need to move now, because this code expires at midnight. Now, do you need to use a coupon code or a discount code in order to get people to move? Absolutely not. You could have done something like timing. You could have done something like what they would be missing out on. Do you really want to go yet another 7 days having super acne, broken out skin, when our other clients or our other customers who purchase our products are having clear skin in 7 days, right? That's going to get somebody to move pretty darn quickly. We took them literally from never hearing of your brand to, oh, that's my problem. Oh, they offer a solution. They do it better than anyone else. Here's social proof that shows that, and here's urgency for why I should move now. We move them through that funnel with our marketing to get them to buy. If you're a service-based business owner, this is kind of like what my client used. We basically, the first day was calling out the exact pain point her audience was silently struggling with, which was essentially saying, because she had actually, it was really interesting. She had 2 people tell her that they had just hired an interior decorator like a few weeks prior because They finally had gotten like a really, really incredible promotion within their business, or not within their business. They had finally gotten a really incredible promotion within their job. And it was really interesting. So they were like, I want to basically, portray myself as the level of success that I have achieved. And so she basically created a piece of content where it's like, you're doing that in every area of your life, except the most important one, which is how you present yourself to the world. Why haven't you hired a stylist yet? And so that was a problem that they weren't aware that they had, which is that they were not presenting themselves to the world in the best light, despite trying to do that in every other area of their lives. Day 2, we explained why the typical strategies they were using weren't working. So a lot of her target audience, she teaches outfit formulas, which is super, super helpful to her target audience. But a lot of people just go shopping and buy more clothes thinking it's going to be easier to get dressed that way, when that's actually not the case. A lot of people will do like the clothing subscription boxes thinking that will help them get dressed easier. And it doesn't. And it's because they don't understand their style. They don't know how to put clothes together, blah, 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 right? So we talked about that. Day 3, we shared a short form client win. So we basically shared like a little screenshot of a win that a client sent to her, and basically kind of explained that in her marketing as to how she created that win for them. So there's that social proof. Day 4, we painted the before and after vision, which was essentially a much more expanded version of that client case study of here's where they were when they came to me, here's where they are now, in a way that represented her target audience. And then we talked about urgency on day 5, which was where they could be essentially in 7 days or in 3 months when they worked with her. And we dropped a very direct call to action, which was to go to the link in her bio and book a call with her. And boom, her DMs lit up. And like I said, she had 2 sales calls and she signed $11,000 in sales in less than 7 days. Just from those few changes, you guys. No different offerings, no different audience, no nothing. We just made her messaging more clear and more specific. Switch number 2. We switched to buyer-led messaging. We rewrote her post to speak to her clients' current problems. Because again, the biggest reason as to why people were not booking with her was because they were not even consuming her content because it wasn't speaking to them. So instead of it just talking about like what they were getting in the accelerator or what they were getting when they went on a shopping excursion with her, we had it basically talk about, hey, here's the problem you have. Here's how you're experiencing those things. Here's why that's not happening for you. And here's how I can help you in a super unique way. And she immediately had more people inquiring about her services. So again, a couple examples of how to do this for product versus service-based businesses. If you had a planner, like a custom design planner company, I have one that's working with me right now. Instead of saying our planner has a 12-week goal setting section, you could potentially say, still setting the same goals every single quarter and not hitting them, here's how to actually follow through and the planner that's built to help you achieve that. Those are things that they're actually experiencing, not just the details of the product itself. And that's what's going to capture their attention and then show them they have a gap that they don't know how to solve on their own. And then you plug your product as the thing that's going to help them the most. Service-based example. Instead of I help you build out your back-end systems of your business, you could say, if you're spending 4 hours a day doing things that your system should handle, you are wasting time where you could be spending supporting clients or making more money. I'm going to help you clean that up and get your time back. Now, your buyer sees themselves in your content, but they also see why they need you to get their time back and to actually make more money in their business. And what's really interesting is that a lot of business owners think that they're doing this, but really they don't talk about an actual problem or desire in a way that their target audience is experiencing it. It's one thing to just say you can't stay on track when it comes to hitting your goals, or your back-end systems are super messy. But if you notice, I didn't just say that. I said, are you still setting the same goals every quarter and not hitting them? Or are you spending 4 hours a day doing things that your systems should be doing? That is something that people will identify with, because people identify with experiences far more than they identify with problems or goals. So when you're talking about your target audience, Because here's the other thing too, is that you can be talking about the same problem, but it's too low level, right? Same thing with my client. Not being able to portray themselves as the most confident, polished, put together version of themselves is a problem that even those lower level people who had like a smaller budget would relate to, except the solution is more so, hey, go shop at TJ Maxx because that's what you can budget for right now. Versus if she spoke to people at the level that she was trying to speak to, because their experience was different, and said that to them, it's not going to connect. But if she said, hey, you're hiring an interior designer because you're trying to get your life together, but you're not doing that, you're not investing in the one thing that could open more doors, which is how you present yourself to the world, that is immediately going to connect with them because that's exactly what they're experiencing. And that's exactly what it did. Shift number 3, we created urgency without doing it in an unethical or sleazy way. You guys have kind of heard me talk a little bit about how I don't love people who create fake urgency, right? If you actually have a limited capacity of spots in your program, great, talk about it. But if you actually have 10 spots available and you're saying only 2 left, what's the fucking point? People can tell, right? If you actually have limited quantity of your product and then you don't know when you're going to restock, great, say that. But if you actually know when you're going to restock and you actually have 100 items left, do not say you have limited quantity. There are so many other ways to get your audience to know that they need to move now rather than you lying to them. And your audience can tell. I hate to break it to you. So we did it without doing it in an unethical way. We added soft ethical urgency throughout her content flow. So we showed what, the delays of working with her were costing them. So it was really interesting. She had somebody who basically was like, why am I waiting? She had 2 boys and she was like, why am I waiting to invest in myself? Because I think that like momming comes first or something, when that's really not true. And so we created urgency by basically saying, are you really going to wait to get yourself together and feel like the most confident version of yourself until your kids are 18? That seems ridiculous. We talked about what they were missing out on if they didn't work with her right then and there, by showcasing client case studies and talking about the timeline of how long it took for them to be in that place. We made it clear that movement equals momentum for them. So by moving, they would basically be able to achieve and be on the way to achieving the results that they so desperately wanted. We made moving the thing that would solve the urgency. So let's talk about some examples of how you could do this for a product or service-based business. So if you have a product-based business, you could say you could wait until next month to finally fix your sleep, but every night you push this off is another groggy morning and another exhausted workday, right? If you talk about how their lack of sleep is impacting their performance, that is something, if they are a very motivated person, that is going to get them to be like, shit, okay, yeah, I need to fix this now. If you're a service-based business, you say you want a higher converting funnel, but you haven't looked at your data in weeks. How long do you want to sit on a leak before it drowns your revenue? That kind of urgency isn't gross. It doesn't guilt people. It just literally tells you the facts. It's like, hey, your sales are a mess, but you haven't looked at your data in weeks. How long are you willing to go while your sales are bleeding until you recognize that enough is enough and you need to fix this before it's too late, essentially? Urgency is most easily created when you highlight what they could have if they purchased your product or invested in your service now, and what they would be missing out on if they didn't do it now. That kind of urgency to me doesn't really guilt people. It just wakes them up. And that is the biggest thing, is like a slap in the face, a reality check, if you will, that I think gets people to move. Okay, so now that we've talked about mistakes she was making, changes that we've made, let's talk about kind of the results that she was able to see. So, like I said, that was about halfway through April. I'm looking at the date on my computer right now, even though I can't see. Once she made those shifts, she really saw changes like pretty instantaneously. Again, this last week was the first week of May. And she let me know, because it had been about 3 weeks, well, going into the 3rd week since we'd had that conversation. Her DMs got way more qualified again. People were referencing like very specific posts that she had put out. Like, oh, you freaking nailed it in your content. Like, this is exactly what I'm struggling with. She didn't have to chase people. They were coming to her. She would handle an objection in her story somebody had on a call with her, and then boom, they would immediately pay. And within 7 days, she had brought in $11,000 in booked business, contracts signed. No ad spend, no new offer, no viral content, same audience, just sharper messaging and a better sales flow. So here's what I want you to understand is that creating more sales is actually really easy. You don't have to do anything different. You don't have to post more. You don't have to create a new offer. You don't have to grow your audience. You don't have to go viral. You just need to say the right things. You need to recognize where your gap is and know what strategies to implement to solve them. The other thing I will also say is that, like, your audience might not be ignoring you. They just might be waiting for you to say the thing that connects with them and actually moves them. So, with that being said, here's kind of like your challenge, if you will, from this episode, right? Number one, I want you to look at your last 5 posts, and I want you to identify the storyline or lack thereof. And then I want you to ask yourself these questions. Am I talking about things my target audience is actually experiencing in the phase of business or life that they're in right now? Number 2, is there a buildup? And then number 3, is there urgency? Is there a reason for them to act now? If not, you don't actually need more content. You don't need more audience members. You don't need a different offer. You don't need a different product. You need different messaging to create movement within your audience. And that truly is something that comes from mastering the right strategy. So, with that being said, if you have questions maybe around why your strategy isn't working or what data to look at to identify what should be working, and if you're recognizing that your messaging and your marketing is kind of missing the mark, I want you to send me a question. Or if you don't know the right question to ask, I want you to just kind of tell me on Instagram like what you're experiencing right now. And just message me the word flow so that I know what episode you came from and I can give you the best like coaching and advice possible to get you some really quick wins and some shifts that you can make to see some sales. Or if you know that you want help with this and you know that you're kind of done playing like the DIY game and you just want someone to come in and be like, hey, here's what's going wrong and here's how to solve it, and you don't want to guess anymore, that's exactly what I'm here for as well. So you can message me and we can have a conversation about if I can support you or what the best level of support for you would be. So again, you guys can message me on Instagram. You can go to the show notes below and fill out the application, whatever is going to be easiest for you. But regardless, I hope that this episode was really helpful so that you could kind of see how easy it is to create more sales with, when I say a couple shifts, I mean it. Literally 2, just a few shifts, and life becomes so much easier and sales become so much easier. So I hope that this gave you some hope and some excitement to dig in, figure out the messaging your audience needs to hear, implement those strategies and see those sales. And if you need help with that, I'm always here for you guys. So I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Thank you as always for listening, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye, you guys.